Most agents don't even realize their buyers over 62 could afford more and never make another mortgage payment. In this episode, I sat down with reverse mortgage expert Jarred Talmadge, who breaks down the real truth behind these myths and how this tool can unlock serious buying power. If you've ever brushed off reverse mortgages, you're going to want to watch this one. Welcome to Pending and Trending. I am your host, Deidre Quinn, and this podcast is all about helping real estate agents stay ahead in today's fast-moving market. With over 20 years of experience and a passion for building relationships, I bring you the latest tips, trends, and strategies to elevate you and your business. Whether you're looking to dominate a niche, stay sharp on industry shifts, or build your own generational wealth, you are in the right place. Let's get to it, because what's trending today can get you pending tomorrow. I'm Deidre Quinn. Just a brief introduction. I've been in the business for over 20 years, and I have a team in the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area, and we also cover the Pocono area. And
Okay.
I am the host of Pending and Trending, and I share insider tips, market trends, and expert strategies to empower real estate agents to thrive, create lasting wealth, build generational wealth, and thriving businesses, basically.
And I will tell you this, I was in Philadelphia 3 weeks ago. That was actually my first week on the job. They flew me to Philadelphia to do financial planner seminars. I was in Philadelphia and then we drove up to New Jersey, did a whole bunch there, and then I came back through Philadelphia. So I was there like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Was it your first time in the Philly area?
The first time in probably 30 years. I think I was there
Okay.
when I was like 12. Actually, that would make it, God damn, that'd make it 40 years. I was there when I was 12. I flew through Philadelphia on my way to summer camp, but that was it. I hadn't been there. I grew up in New York. So I knew Philadelphia was close. I just never went.
Okay, yeah, and it's changed a lot over the years, right?
Yeah.
We are certainly a foodie town these days and
Well,
have so many great restaurants and fun things happening in the Philadelphia in downtown. So,
I'll tell you, I loved how diverse the city is because, like, out here in the West, it tends to get a little too homogenous unless you live in certain areas. Like mine area tends to be more Hispanic, and then where we tend to shop tends to be more diversified to everybody. But we did that on purpose because we had lived in a white enclave for way too long, and we're like, we know there's diversity out there. We know the food's better, so we're moving. So we moved
right.
to a more diverse area for that very reason. And man, the food's better, and the experience is better, and I like my neighbors now as opposed to before. So anyway,
Good,
my little touch of diversity there for you. So
good. Yeah, I'm glad you got to visit Philly.
yeah.
Um, So, just to introduce you to our listeners, Jarred is a senior reverse mortgage loan officer at Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation.
Yep.
And you specialize in educating real estate professionals, attorneys, financial planners, CPAs about reverse mortgage solutions, right?
Yeah. Think of it this way. A lot of people will say, "Oh, you sell reverse mortgage." No, I really don't. My job is to educate. And the way that the program works, either you fit into it or you don't. There's not really a sale there. But when it comes down to it, when you get to that point, it can really be transformative for clients. It can be transformative for agents. It can be transformative for families. Mostly because a lot of people don't know what it's capable of doing. What they've learned, they know from watching TV ads, basically.
And it's really the timing of this. It seems to me like I've started to see more things on reverse mortgages just lately. And I don't know if that's because I knew that you were coming on the show and I was paying closer attention, or if that's really the case. But I feel it's certainly been something underutilized. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And here's why. But it's underutilized because the industry itself, in my opinion, has always screwed up how they marketed it. And they allowed the conversation to be set by people who really don't know what they're talking about. And so, one of the first conversations I have with, for example, with agents is I'll talk to the agents and say, look, do you have somebody who's over the age of 62? They're probably, pretty well financially set. And so maybe they come along and they say, oh, I want to pay cash for my house because I don't want a mortgage payment. Fair enough. And you say, what's your budget? They tell you what their budget is. And then you take them out, you show them what they can get for that budget. And their response is, I don't like that. Then what do you do? As a real estate agent, your options are you can either go get a loan for more, right? Or you can just deal with the fact that you have to buy something less than. And we all know that when you're buying something less than, that doesn't help the agent, it doesn't help the client, and everybody is unhappy. So for the agents, I say to them, here is simply another option. You don't need to understand how it works when it comes to all the nitpicky stuff. I can explain that. What it comes down to is I do what I call cocktail math. And the cocktail math is very simple. Take the age of the youngest borrower or the youngest person. So let's say you have a couple and that person is 62. I subtract 35 from their age, and that number is pretty much whatever it is. So in this case, that would be what? 62 less 35. So 27. So that means they could get approximately 27% in additional funds to allow them to purchase a house. So what would if you're a realtor, and again, this is basic back of the napkin at a cocktail party math, if you could add 27% to what that person could purchase, would that make a difference?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then on top of that, so you get an extra, in this case, 27%. What happens if they also don't have to make payments in their lifetime other than their taxes, their insurance, their HOA? Now you have a really good option. That's how the realtors deal with it. For the kids, usually the kids are the ones that, in my opinion, are the ones that stand in the way of this and say, oh, no, it's not, it's bad. But the kids don't really understand it either, because the kids are constantly worried about what happens if mom and dad pass away. And they've heard every single negative thing out there. They don't get the house, the bank gets it, they're selling their equity. None of this is true, right? It's literally, when I explain it to somebody, I say, okay, so if you have a mortgage with a bank, right? The bank is lending you money in exchange. They put a lien on your house, and they say, when you either sell the house or refinance, we want to get paid back. Reverse mortgage is the exact same thing. The only difference is if you're 62 and over and you do a reverse mortgage, the advantage is you don't have to make a payment unless you want to. That's it. And somewhere along the line, that got contorted into every negative thing you've ever heard about reverse mortgage. But at the end of the day, I explain to people and I say it's really like the first-time homebuyer process. Right. First-time homebuyers get low down payment options that some of us can't qualify for. This is just the other end of the spectrum. This is, you've been paying your mortgage, you've been taking care of your house, you're older. This is another option for you. It's really all it is.
And you hit on some of this, saying really all people know is what they see on TV and hear on TV. And it tends to have a negative connotation. And people think, oh, mom or dad or grandmom or grandpop, they're going to lose their house if they do this reverse mortgage. What do you say to those people? How do you navigate that?
So here's really what I say to them. First off, let's talk about, I always ask them the same question. Have you ever done a reverse mortgage? Usually the answer is no. Second question, do you know anybody else who's done a reverse mortgage? Usually the answer is no. And then I ask them, what do you know about reverse mortgage? And usually they say, oh, I don't know anything, but I know this. And then it's usually negative. And I say to them, okay, so let's deal with just level set here. You've never met anybody who's done it. You've never done it yourself, and all you've heard is negative. Yes, I understand completely why you think this might be a bad thing for mom and dad to do. But here's my question to you. If I presented to you a financial product that said, mom and dad can, instead of being worried about tomorrow, what do I do if, and instead of doing that, what if instead I said to you, mom and dad have been spending their entire life building up the equity in their house. And they can borrow against that equity, and there are safeguards in place to make sure that they're not getting taken advantage of. The government basically regulates how much money they can spend. So it's not like the old days, let's call it 2017. It's not pre-2017 where mom and dad can go out and get 100% of that house and then find themselves upside down without cash. It just doesn't work that way. And this is the thing that I think really changes the conversation. The reverse mortgage has protections so that if mom and dad make the mortgage, say we don't want to make the mortgage payment, we just don't want to do it, but we paid our property taxes, our homeowner's insurance, and our HOA, if they have it, they can never be foreclosed on, ever. Doesn't matter what the stock market, doesn't matter what the lender, doesn't matter if the world goes completely kaput like it did in 2008. They cannot get foreclosed on. So let me ask you this, Mr. and Mrs. Client, and your children. If mom and dad are in their 70s and they decide they want to do a reverse mortgage, and the idea is They're doing it so that they can get a line of credit to use later when they're in their 80s or in their 90s. And even if they spent every single dime of their money and the housing market crashed and interest rates went through the roof, your parents are still protected. They can't be thrown out of their house. Is that something you'd want to know more about? Or do you want to tell me that it's a bad idea?
So you're really, really digging into that education.
Correct. And my point on education is simply that there's only really three reasons why somebody does a reverse mortgage. That's it. Everything else can be subcategorized under that. But the first one is they want to stop making their mortgage payment, the principal and interest part of the mortgage. Fair enough. It's a large amount of income. It's a large amount of their income that's going to that. The second one is they need cash. The thing is, retirement and building your ability to help your kids or your grandchildren or whatever it is all about cash. So the reverse mortgage unlocks that cash. And then the third one, which is the least common of them, is they have a tax issue and they need to fix it. In which case I tell them, look, I can talk to you about a reverse mortgage. I recommend you talk to your CPA or your accountant because I'm not one and I don't want to be one. But there are tax ramifications to doing it for the people that are in that position that they can afford to do it, in which case go talk to them and then let's talk. But most of the time, if you're dealing with somebody who's on Social Security, what do they do if they have a house that doesn't fit them anymore? There's too many stairs. The yard takes too much work. They don't like the bathrooms aren't capable of helping them. You can either do one of two things. You can either move, in which case now it's going to cost you money to move and money to buy, or you can stay put and you can modify your house. Either way, it costs cash. Reverse mortgage opens those options for them. It's just all it is. It's education and giving them more choices.
That's great. That's great. So are they actually becoming more common, or is that my perception?
I think they're becoming more common because I think a lot of more people are learning about they're learning more about it. And like everything else, the more you learn about it, the better you feel about it. In Europe, it's pretty common. There are parts of the United States, for example, St. George, Utah, is an entire community that something like 80 or 90% of the homes in that neighborhood or that city have reverse mortgages
Right.
because the city was just built up on that. And they said, oh, this is a great thing. Why wouldn't we do that? And that's a lot of the common response I get from clients is once we sit down, we have a conversation about it. We say, look, I'm not trying to sell you anything because either you can or you can't. But if I tell you about it and I tell you about all these things and I educate you on this stuff, and then, and this is a key, this is why I tell people I am an educator, not a guru. A guru will tell you, here's what you should do. Don't question me. I prefer to say to clients, question me all you want. Ask me everything because I can actually answer it and I can provide backup information and I can tell you where to find the answers to say, it's not just me telling you this. It's out there. And so that's why I think it's becoming more common is because we're finally overcoming the stigmas that is somehow negative because it's really not.
That's great. So someone can use a reverse mortgage to actually buy a home.
Yes, yes,
So you mentioned somebody that is their current home doesn't fit them. It has too many stairs. Philadelphia is a perfect example of this because it's
yes,
just so
exactly.
vertically. And it's okay, you know what? Like I can't climb 4 stories or 3 stories or whatever that is, or even 2 stories sometimes to go to bed at night or get down to the kitchen to have make food. Tell me about that process and how they would use a reverse mortgage. They would sell their house and use a reverse mortgage to buy their new
Sure.
house, right?
So here's as simple as it gets. So you decide that your house doesn't work for you. So what do? You probably contact a realtor. The realtor says, okay, we're going to go do, and they do their thing. And then they say, this is what we should sell the house for. And this, and they give you a number. And they say, most likely after everything is said and done, here's the amount of money that you're going to get back once you sell the house. So now we're sitting on this lump sum number. Okay. So let's say, and I'm just going to use a number at 500,000 and I'm going to multiply it by, let's say, or divide by 73% because I'm going to go ahead and use that number. So we're looking at, you're adding approximately 25%, right? So we're just going to, for argument's sakes, we're going to say 125%. So we're going to say that means that if they're sitting on $500,000, let's say their choices are they can buy a house and pay cash for $500,000, or in this scenario, and again, this is just jumbling the numbers, let's say they can purchase a house using a reverse mortgage. They're going to purchase a house for $625,000. And of that, they're going to put down, let's say, $500,000, and the $125,000 is going to be financed. It is exactly like purchasing a house any other way. You go through the mortgage process, you get approved, you find the house, you write a contract, you're done. Here's the difference, okay? Reverse mortgages are not credit based at all. They're based on your age of the youngest borrower and the property. So the property has to comply with FHA standards, which are generally considered good standards by real estate agents. And so then it becomes, can you find something for $500,000, or do you want to find something up to $625,000? And then you just go through the process. But with a reverse mortgage, they're going to look at your credit, but your credit is not the determining factor. What they want to know is, at the end of the day, can you afford to eat? Can you afford your property taxes, your homeowner's insurance, your HOA, and still have money left over? That's it. And when you present that and you take out all the noise around it, the seniors generally go, well, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I look at that as an option? I don't know, because here's the other thing, right? So what if you said the same thing with that $500,000 house, and the client says, look, I have $500,000, but I want to save some cash, right? So what I would tell them is, okay, instead, let's do this the opposite way. They decide they want to buy a $500,000 house. So they have the 500,000, they have the $500,000 in cash. They say, I want to buy a house for 500,000. I don't want to go into anything more. Fine. What if I told you, as an agent and as a client, that same $500,000 house, you could put down $375,000, use the reverse mortgage to finance the rest. Now, in theory, you have $125,000 in cash that had been wrapped up in your house. You can put that aside and say, here's my nest egg, $125,000, and you can still buy a $500,000 house. Now, imagine if you are fixed on an income on Social Security at a few $1,000s a month, and you're saying, my house doesn't work, I want to buy something new, and now I can buy a condo or a ranch house or something that fits better your needs. And you have this pile of money sitting on the other side over here that says, I can do whatever I want with that. So what happens if you buy the house in a neighborhood that may not be as up and coming as you want, but you want to have some money to renovate the house? Maybe you want to put in some modifications. Maybe you want to renovate. It doesn't matter. You can save that money for a rainy day, or you can go on vacation. You do whatever you want with it. It's your money. But now you have options. And that's the thing that I don't think most people understand, is it's not necessarily that a reverse mortgage person is trying to come in and take what you have. It's, we're here to educate and give you the availability to make different decisions if you want to. You clearly don't have to.
Right.
But options are what makes the world go round.
And it certainly sounds like an ideal solution for so many.
Absolutely. It doesn't affect your Social Security. It doesn't affect your retirement. There's all kinds of things that you can do to make yourself better. Now, you and I had briefly exchanged emails, and you were talking about how to build generational wealth with this. So I'm going to throw out an idea to you, okay? Which is, let's talk about inheritance for a second, okay? Because this is where people get sticky when it comes to reverse mortgage. They say, oh, you're taking the money from mom and dad and they're spending it now, so I don't have an inheritance later. Okay, let's play that out for a second. First off, it's not your money. It's your parents' money. So the fact that the kids have anything to say about it, I really don't understand that. But let's say I'm mom and dad. I'm in my 60s. I do a reverse mortgage. And I'm doing the reverse mortgage specifically so that I can take care of myself in my later years. The reverse mortgage is capped. Okay, you can't borrow 100%. You can't even borrow 50% unless you're in your late 80s or up. You're just not going to get to borrow that much money. So think of it this way. You're borrowing like 40%, which means the equity is still growing in the house. Okay. But this gives mom and dad the availability to say, you know what, if we want to pass on money to our children in our lifetime, they can, because they can use the money from the reverse mortgage. They can literally hand it to the kids or the grandkids. I actually once did a reverse mortgage for a lady who was in her 90s. And she said to me, what I really want to do is I want to pay for my grandson's education. And I said, okay. And we did the math. We figured out that she had something like $250,000. This was 4 or 5 years ago. She had about $250,000 available to borrow. And she says, look, my grandson is going to medical school. He is, and she was so proud of this fact because he was like second generation college graduate. He was going to medical school. He's going to be a doctor and a surgeon. And she knew that he was going to have medical debt or he was going to have debt when he came out of school. So she said, you know what? I'm going to change the course of my family's life because I'm going to do the reverse mortgage, take the money out. And she literally went to his college graduation, handed him an envelope, didn't tell him what it was. So he's been accepted into medical school. He's already starting to apply for loans. And grandma walks up to him at graduation and says, grandson, I'm so excited for you here. It was a check for $250,000 to pay for school. You want to talk
Amazing.
about changing somebody's life?
Yeah.
She's still, when she passed away, she did pass away a couple of years ago. There was still equity in her house, so she was able to pass on equity.
Right.
She wasn't like massively in debt, but she was able to pass on that money, which then got paid off when they sold their house. Her kids paid off the house and still had money left over. But she was able in her lifetime to affect her grandson's ability to go to school. And that's just one example of one way you can use the money to have a generational effect.
No, that's excellent, and I'm glad that you brought that to light. And you said something in that sentence when you first started speaking about that. And I did a video for Instagram, and this is a true story. I took a house. People are always saying, "Oh, is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to buy?" And I took a house back in, I told you I'd been in the business now for over 20 years. In 2004, I showed this house and it sold for 292,500. Okay. Fast forward to 2014 and the house sold again for 525,000.
Mhm.
I listed the same house in 2019 and it ended up selling for 630,000. And then it sold again not that long ago for 650,000. So you said something really important there, and I love helping people build generational wealth, and that's one of the things that we pride ourselves on helping our clients do. And they can use a reverse mortgage and still gain that appreciation because historically real estate's appreciating. So they still have that, right? And they still have all that time that depending on where they fall in that time frame, look at how much equity they would have built just from the appreciation. So I love that.
Yeah, and so here I'm going to give you two other examples of how I've helped clients do this because this really affects that generational wealth. First one I'm going to talk about is something that might work for you guys in and realtors and real estate agents will get this. You can use a reverse mortgage to purchase up to a fourplex as long as you live in one. So I had a client about 4 years ago, and his wife had passed away at a young age, and he's sitting on this house that he's got a large house, and he says, "Look, it's just me. I don't need this house anymore." So he says, "I'm going to sell it." I said, "Okay." So he comes back and he says, I think he had, after everything was said and done, he settled up and he said, I have $750,000, whatever it was. And I said, what are you going to do with it? He says, I've decided what I want to do is I want to buy, I want to set up my retirement. He says, but I only have this 750,000. And he said, everybody's telling me to invest and everybody's telling me to do this. And he says, but I think what I want to do is I want to buy a fourplex. I said, okay. And I said, what's your thought? And he says, the client says, I read about this and he says, here's what I'm going to do. He says, I want you to help me buy a fourplex with a reverse mortgage. Got it. I can do. Now I understood what he was doing. I'm like, okay. So what he did was he went out and he found a fourplex and he finds this rundown fourplex that he purchases and he takes some of the money that he buys from and he basically says, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it with a reverse mortgage. I think he was in his 70s at that point, so he maybe got 30, he could put down like 60%, 65%, something like that. Whatever it was, he put down the money and he had this pile of money left over. So he takes the pile of money and he renovates all 4 units. And he makes his unit like the nicest of the units, and he's got all kinds of new stuff in there. And then he renovates the other 3 units too. So they're really very nice. So then he goes to his three best friends and he says, guys, I know you're overpaying for your stuff. I know you don't like house maintenance and don't like all this other stuff. Why don't you guys sell your houses and come move into each of you guys can move into one of these units? And they said, okay, why do we want to do this? We're best friends. Might as well do this. Where it gets really brilliant is he says to his friends, the market value for me to rent this place is $2,000 each per unit. He says, I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to cut you a deal. I'm going to rent them to you for $1,000 a unit. So you guys sell your houses, take your money, go invest it, and this way you can live here for $12,000 a year. 3 units, $12,000 a year. So he creates $36,000 in income, and he has the only cost he has is the insurance on the property and the maintenance, because the maintenance and the taxes, because he has no HOA.
Right.
So he has taken a negative, turned it completely into a positive, has his three best friends living next door, and they were supplementing his income. So now his income went from about $2,000 a month to $5,000 a month, and his only cost was the insurance, maintenance, upkeep on the property, which does what? Keeps going up in value.
Absolutely.
And so all of a
Absolutely.
sudden, now I said to him, I said, if you want, when this property keeps going up in value, the way the reverse mortgage works is you can always refinance it later. And you can get more money out if you want because you're going to be older and the property's going to be worth more. And all of a sudden, he set up his complete retirement and he's got extra money because he has all this money saved and he's got income. It's all about the
Brilliant.
cash flow.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And
The
certainly a
other
win for his friends, right?
It's a win for his friends. It's a win for him. He gets to be social. And if you really think about it, he's created income. He's not reliant on the government. He's not reliant on anybody else. And he's managed to create himself something that if he ever has to move after that, he could sell it as an asset and then he's taken care of for the rest of his life. Not a bad
Excellent.
deal,
Not
right?
bad at all. Not bad at all. That's excellent. That's excellent. And it's great, a great feeling to be a part of that journey, is it not?
Absolutely. Absolutely it is.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I appreciate you sharing all of this with us. And I've learned a lot myself, and I'm sure our listeners have too. And now I understand that you've written quite a few books,
Yes.
and I'd like to just touch on that a little bit. And
Okay.
if there was one book that you would recommend for our listeners, which one would that be?
So I'm going to say it's this one, which is this is Reverse Mortgages and Insider Answers All Your Questions.
Okay.
And the reason I wrote this, and this is where this kind of grew out of, I I've been in the mortgage business for 30 years. I found reverse mortgage 6 years ago. And as we know, 2019 was a really good year. 2020, not so much. So when I was during in the height of COVID, we couldn't talk face to face. Zoom wasn't considered new, it was still new, even though it had been around for a while. But I realized that when I was talking to people, I needed to answer questions for them. And I can tell you, it's always the same 10, 12 questions that come up. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. And so I started writing this because I was like, I need a way to communicate with everybody without possibly getting them sick during COVID. So I wrote this book. And it started as a pamphlet of just a question and answer thing. And as it grew, it became the answers, it became the book. And so I tell a story about, and actually, I'll admit this, I actually stole the story from a financial planner. But the book opens with a story about a guy who was living in a house under an overpass in California and how unhappy he was because his property taxes were so high, it was eating up all of his income. And how a reverse mortgage really changed his life. He wound up moving to Colorado. He bought a house, wound up living his best retirement. But the idea was everybody has the same questions because everybody's heard the same thing. Everybody's learned everything everybody knows for the most part. They learn from watching television. So I sat down and I said, I want to set the record straight. I want to answer all the questions that you have. Does the bank own my house? Am I going to lose it? Am I selling myself out? All the things that we've heard that's negative, I wanted to address those. And so I put them in the books. And since then, I've written five books on reverse, depending on, I have a book about for the kids, I have a book for the adults, I have a book for what if you want to pay for in-home health care or you want to be financially better off, whatever it is. The idea basically is this. There is so much misinformation out there. There's so much information that's wrong. And some of the financial gurus out there don't understand the product. And so they keep pushing out this negative information. And so I tell people, I'm like, look, the more you learn about this product, the better it gets. It's just that simple. And so I recommend to people, if you want to check out the book, start with Reverse Mortgage and Insider Answers All Your Questions. it will answer 90% of your questions. But I also include in there my phone number, and I say, look, you want to call and ask me questions? I don't know how many authors actually do that. I know it's rare, but I also know I've talked to a lot of people around the country and they've said, oh, this is great. And I can help them find somebody who's reputable who can get them help.
That's excellent. That's great. I will pick up a couple of copies of your book, one for myself and one for clients that perhaps it could benefit, right? So
Yeah.
I love that. And
The easiest way to find it, you can either go to my website, which is jarredtalmadge.com. So it's literally myname.com, or you can find it on Amazon. Just type in my name, you'll find it.
that's great. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And then as an added bonus here, when I was doing some research, did you write a book about LinkedIn? Is that
I did actually. Let's see if I have them over here.
now am I
Yes, I did. I've
correct?
actually written two.
Now,
One
one
is
of
called
them was named number two by Housing Wire in the top 10 books to read. Do I have that right? Am I
Yes,
like
yes. So the book is The LinkedIn Real Estate Agent. Inman actually picked it up first and called it the best book of 2024. And it is and there's a companion book to it called The LinkedIn Salesperson. So if you're not a real estate agent, but you want that, there's also a version called The LinkedIn Salesperson. But yeah, basically what it was, one of the things that I do to meet with realtors is I teach LinkedIn. And so I wrote this book after I had taught this class for LinkedIn. I've been teaching this class for about a decade. And I realized I wanted something to be able to give away to people when they had a class or have them be able to do this. And so I took my seminar and basically turned it into a book and I published it. And Inman picked it up about a month later. Never told me, by the way. I didn't find out about this until 6 months later. Somebody emailed me and they said, "Hey, by the way, do you know you made the best book of the year?" And I said, "I didn't know that." It was really cool. And yes, so there is a book called The LinkedIn Real Estate Agent, and it'll take an agent or a salesperson through the process step by step. How do you turn LinkedIn into something that generates business every day for you? And I think Inman I've got the thing right here. It says it's basically how to stand out in the digital marketplace.
That's great. That's great. And I love that as well because I do think that LinkedIn is one of the most underutilized social media platforms from a real estate perspective as well. Is that like in line with your thoughts
Oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah, and why is that? Why do we not use
So here's the thing, right? So as a real estate agent, here's the question I always pose to my real estate agents. Would you rather be the single agent in a room of 1,000 people that need to buy a house? Or would you rather be one of 1,000 agents in a room where there's only one home buyer? And they say, I'd rather be obviously the one guy in the 1,000. I said, great. That's what LinkedIn is right now. Real estate agents largely ignore it because they don't understand it. They say, oh, I can post stuff on Instagram, I can post things on Facebook. Yeah. And what are you going to get for it? You're going to get likes, you're going to get comments. Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get shares. But when you think about Facebook or Instagram, what do we think about? We think about, I go there to be entertained. I don't go there to buy something. LinkedIn, totally different set. LinkedIn's entire point of existence is to connect you with other people who are buying and or selling something. That's literally what the platform's about.
right?
And yet, agents will say, why should I care? Here's the thing. If you buy a toothbrush today, you're going to go on Amazon and you're going to research it and you're going to read the reviews, right? And if you're going to spend $3 to buy a toothbrush and read the reviews, what do you think that person's going to do if they want to buy a house or sell a house? They're going to research you, right?
Absolutely.
So what do? They go to Google, they type in your name, and what pops up? Here's the thing. Most people can't control that, right? They can't control what comes up. The truth is you can, and you do. You can actually control what comes up on Google when you search yourself. LinkedIn is how you do that. And so then if somebody says to me, oh, I did a Google search on you and I pulled this up, and the first thing that comes up are the top three, it's always in the top three, is your LinkedIn profile if you've done it. You have the opportunity to control the narrative. You can control what that person is reading about. Would you not do that? Would you ignore that or say, you know what, it's not really that important? Oh, it's absolutely important
So
because
important.
if you control the narrative, and they find you and they pop it up and it says, oh, Deidre Quinn specializes in this neighborhood or this area or these kind of things in Philadelphia. And I'm comparing that to Mr. Agent who just says realtor at company, and then it lists every company they've worked for between now and the last 20 years. But your profile is telling them, I specialize in this neighborhood, or I do these kind of things, or I do this for my buyers, or this for my sellers. Now you're starting to see where this is actually a sales pitch. The thing is, people don't see it that way. They just see it as information. It says, oh, if I read about you and it says that your specialty is in working with seniors and you help people find main floor master homes in this neighborhood of Philadelphia, and that person is looking for a ranch house in those neighborhoods, you've just taken yourself and said, everybody is here, I'm up here. Who are you going to work with? It's advertising 101. If you want to be successful as an agent, you cannot compare yourself to everybody else. You have to set yourself above everybody else and give yourself. And so the way you do that is you set yourself up and say, I'm my own category, because then nobody can compete with you.
Love it. Love it. That's great. That's great. So I have 2 books to add to my must read list too. And I always have 2 or 3 books that I'm reading at the same time. Love reading. And I'm going to pick up my copies today.
Excellent.
So that's great. That's great. Is there one thing that you want to share with our listeners that you think would benefit them if they implemented it right away?
In terms of LinkedIn?
In terms of anything that we've
here. So here's the thing. The world is full of options. Just because somebody doesn't know that option exists doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. And so my advice is take everything with a grain of salt and ask questions. Because here's the thing. The worst thing that can happen to you is you can say, you know what? I heard about this reverse mortgage thing, or I heard about this LinkedIn thing. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm done. I'm out. You've just cut yourself off from all kinds of opportunity. And if instead you open yourself up and say, you know what? I know enough to know that I don't know everything. And I can talk to an expert. That the potential there could change your entire world. Whether that's trying to sell something or whether you're trying to buy a house or trying to figure out how you're going to make it through retirement. Right now, I know from listening to my clients that they're scared to death of what's going on with Social Security, because there's every politician, regardless of what side you're talking about, wants to do something with Social Security. If I'm a senior and I'm living on Social Security and that is my retirement, yeah, there is absolutely legitimate reason to be scared. But you don't have to be. You have options. You can learn about it. At worst, you go, you know what? I learned about this option and I decided it's really not what I want to do. Okay. But what if you find out that option that you thought was terrible, you turn out and goes, you know what? I can make my life better because of this. Make my life easier because of this. But you can't do it if you don't check it out. So learn.
Sure.
Ask questions. Sure. Don't be afraid. And I put this out to your listeners. They can always email me. They can always send me requests. I'm happy to answer them. It doesn't matter what part of the country they're in, because I'm more than happy to refer them to somebody within their division. Like you were talking about, you're in Philadelphia. I was in Philadelphia 3 weeks ago. I know at least 3 guys in Philadelphia that do exactly what I do, that work for my company, that I'd be happy to refer them to.
Excellent. Excellent. So would you like to share your email address with us?
Yep. So it's really easy. It's my name, Jarred.Talmadge @fairwaymc.com.
Perfect. That's great. And you have been a wealth of information. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on Pending and Trending, and for sharing your insights on how reverse mortgages can benefit homeowners and investors, and sharing real life examples, in addition to the LinkedIn bonus that I think it's a win all the way around. So I truly appreciate the conversation.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. That's a wrap on this episode of Pending and Trending, where hot meets what's happening in real estate. If you found today's conversation helpful, we'd love for you to hit follow or subscribe, leave a quick review, and share the episode with fellow agent or industry pro. Got a trend, tip, or hot take we should be talking about? Send it our way, and we might feature it in an upcoming episode. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay sharp, keep your transactions in motion, and let your energy keep trending.